He walked out the door the moment I told him I was pregnant, and never looked back. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. But what he didn't know was that his abandonment wouldn't break me, it would shape me. What began as a nightmare of loneliness turned into an unexpected story of courage, sacrifice, and a quiet, beautiful redemption. Sometimes, the people who leave your life are exactly the reason you rise. Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, where pain turns to purpose, and real stories touch the soul. Rain beat gently against the kitchen window, drumming like the nerves in my chest. I sat on the edge of the old wooden stool, clutching the pregnancy test like it was a lifeline or a ticking bomb. 2 pink lines. No doubt. My heart was racing. I had played this moment in my head so many times, telling Ryan, watching his eyes light up, imagining how he would scoop me up and kiss me with joy. I heard his car pull up. The door opened with its usual squeak. "Hey babe," he called, shaking off his coat. I smiled nervously. "Hey. Can we talk?" He tossed his keys on the counter and looked at me, confused. "You okay?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Longer than I expected. He didn't smile. His brows drew together. "Wait, what?" "I'm pregnant, Ryan." I tried to keep my voice steady, my hands trembling. He blinked, rubbed his face, then laughed, but not the warm kind. "You can't be serious. Emily, we can't afford a baby." "I told you, I'm not ready for this." I stepped closer. "But we'll figure it out. Together. We always do." He shook his head, stepping away like the words burned him. "No. I'm not doing this. I can't." My chest caved in. "Ryan, please. Don't beg," he snapped. "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" I echoed, stunned. "You're going to walk away? From me? From our baby?" He looked me dead in the eyes, emotionless. "You're on your own." And just like that, the man I had trusted with my heart and future turned and walked out the door. No backward glance. No hesitation. Just gone. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the rain outside now sounding like thunder in my ears. My world shattered in one sentence. That night, I barely slept. I kept my hand on my belly, whispering, "I've got you. We're going to be okay." But truthfully, I didn't know how. Rent was due in 12 days. My bank account had less than $70. I had quit my job months ago at Ryan's insistence. He wanted to take care of me. Now, I had no job, no savings, and no one. The next morning, I sat on the worn-out couch, staring into space as the reality sank in. Every corner of our small apartment whispered memories, our laughter, our plans, our late-night dance sessions. Now it was just echoes. I knew I had to move. Grief wouldn't feed a baby. Fear wouldn't pay rent. So I took the first step. I opened my laptop and started looking for work. Any work. Babysitting, typing, data entry, cleaning, anything. I also called every friend I had. Most offered kind words, but no one could truly help. They had their own struggles. I didn't blame them. But I would not give up. That night, I made myself a promise: my child would never feel abandoned like I had. And that promise would become my strength. A week later, the fridge hummed in the background, echoing through the nearly empty apartment. My cupboards held only a few cans, and my belly had started to feel the first signs of morning sickness. Yet, I pushed through it. I had to. I had managed to land a part-time cleaning job at a hotel nearby. It wasn't glamorous, and it barely paid minimum wage, but it was something. The uniform didn't quite fit, and my feet ached by noon, but I reminded myself, every scrubbed floor brought me one step closer to stability. After every shift, I'd stop by the community library and send out job applications, praying for a full-time opportunity. The walk home was long, and the city's cold winds showed no mercy, but I held my coat tighter and whispered to my baby, "We're stronger than this." It was during one of those library visits that I met Martha. She was older, maybe in her late 60s, with silver hair pinned neatly into a bun and warm eyes behind thick glasses. She noticed me one day as I fought back tears while typing yet another rejection email. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded too quickly. "Yes, just tired." She didn't push, but she sat beside me. "You remind me of myself when I was younger. Life throws curveballs, doesn't it?" That simple sentence opened a floodgate. I found myself telling her everything about Ryan, the baby, the job, the fear. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she just smiled and said, "Sometimes the people who leave are just making space for something better. You may not see it now, but this is not your ending, it's your beginning." The kindness in her words was like a salve to my wounded heart. Over the next few days, Martha and I became unlikely friends. She was retired, lived a quiet life, and spent her afternoons volunteering at the library. When she heard I hadn't been eating much, she brought me warm soup in a thermos, wrapped in a napkin with little quotes like "You are braver than you believe." And then, just as I was starting to regain a sense of balance, life threw me another blow. When I returned home one evening, the apartment door was slightly ajar. My heart raced. Inside, everything was in disarray. The few valuables I had were gone, my second-hand laptop, some jewelry, even the grocery cards I had been saving. I sank to my knees. Tears welled up, not from the lost items, but from the sheer weight of trying so hard and still falling short. But just as despair threatened to swallow me again, I noticed something under the doorframe, an envelope. Inside was a folded note in unfamiliar handwriting. "You don't know me, but I saw what happened to you at the hotel. I know you didn't deserve it. I'm sorry this happened. Please don't give up." No name. No address. Just $200 in cash. It wasn't much. But it was everything in that moment. Not just the money, but the message. Someone had seen me. Someone cared. I clutched the note to my chest and whispered, "We're going to be okay, baby. I promise." Because even in the darkest hours, hope still found a way to knock on my door. The snow outside had turned to a relentless downpour of icy rain, tapping rhythmically against the windowpane. I was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a faded blanket, sipping a cup of tea that Martha had brought by earlier. My belly had grown noticeably, every flutter from the baby was a quiet reminder of the life I was carrying, the life I was fighting for. It had been 3 weeks since the robbery, and though I was still shaken, I hadn't stopped moving forward. I was working double shifts now. Cleaning during the day, and waitressing part-time at a tiny 24-hour diner downtown. The manager, a woman named Rhonda, had taken a liking to me and often let me eat leftover pies after my shift. But my body was beginning to feel the toll. One night, while wiping down the last table before closing, a sharp pain shot through my back and I nearly dropped the tray I was carrying. I sat down heavily, breathing through it. Rhonda rushed over. "Are you okay? Sit. Sit. I told you to take it easy, girl." I nodded. "Just a cramp. I'll be fine." "You're pregnant, alone, and working harder than anyone else here." "That's not fine." I looked at her, expecting judgment or pity. But instead, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said, "You remind me of myself when I was young. Never ask for help, but always the first to give it. You don't have to do it all alone." That sentence sat with me all night. The next day, I got an unexpected call. It was Martha. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said. I met her at the library where she introduced me to a woman named Celeste, a warm-faced social worker who ran a support program for young mothers in crisis. Celeste listened to my story quietly, nodding at the right moments. Then she handed me a pamphlet. "We can help with prenatal care, housing support, and even job placement after the baby is born," she said. "You're not alone anymore." The words were hard to believe. I had grown used to the silence of cold shoulders and closed doors. But Celeste followed through. In less than a week, I was moved into a small, clean shared housing unit for single mothers. I had my own room, a warm bed, and regular checkups. There was even a small nursery attached, painted in cheerful colors, with toys and books stacked neatly on shelves. One afternoon, as I folded the tiny clothes donated by kind strangers, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't just surviving. I was healing. That evening, while sitting by the window, I saw something across the street that made my heart skip a beat. It was Ryan. He looked the same, still handsome, still confident. But beside him was a woman, her arm looped through his, laughing at something he said. They looked like they had everything figured out. He didn't see me. And even if he had, I realized I didn't need him to. I placed a hand on my belly and whispered, "We're doing just fine, love." Because I finally understood, strength isn't about holding it all together. It's about rising when everything falls apart, and learning that real love starts with the way you choose to carry yourself through the storm. The wind howled outside, rattling the thin window panes as I sat at the kitchen table, cradling a warm cup of chamomile tea. It had been months since Ryan walked out that door, leaving behind nothing but silence and a folded note of apology that never once said "I'll be back." But here I was. Still standing, still breathing, and now with a quiet strength that had been carved out of heartbreak, night after night. The baby, my son, had arrived a few weeks earlier, a peaceful, wide-eyed boy with the most calming presence I'd ever felt. I named him Elijah, after my grandfather, the only man who ever taught me what it meant to show up for someone, day after day. Elijah slept soundly in the cradle next to me, wrapped in a handmade blanket gifted by another mother at the shelter. Every tiny breath he took reminded me that life, even shattered, was still beautiful. That morning, as I rocked him gently and listened to the radio crackling in the background, there was a knock on the door. I opened it cautiously, and nearly dropped to the floor. Ryan. He looked different, worn out, thinner, almost apologetic. In his hands, he clutched a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers. "I just found out," he said softly, eyes dropping to Elijah sleeping behind me, "that you went through everything. Alone." My heart thudded in my chest, not from joy, not from longing, but from clarity. "Yes," I replied. "Alone. And we're okay." He stood there in the doorway, expecting, what? A hug? Redemption? That I'd fall into his arms like a broken woman still waiting? "I made a mistake," he whispered. "A big one. I was scared. I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to be a man." I nodded. "And I didn't know how to be a mother either. But I became one the moment I chose to stay, when you ran." His eyes welled up. Can I be part of his life?" There was a time I would have screamed yes. But that time had passed. "You can try. If you're willing to show up, not just say the right words. He doesn't need another goodbye." And just like that, I closed the door, just enough to let him know that he could knock again, but the door to the old me was locked. Later that evening, while feeding Elijah by the window, I realized something deep. Sometimes, the strongest love stories aren't the ones where people fall in love with each other. They're the ones where a woman finds a reason to love herself again. And as the moonlight spilled over us, I whispered to my son, we didn't just survive. We rose. For more powerful and heart-touching life stories, subscribe to Storytelling and Beyond, where every tear has a voice, and every voice matters.